want to move on though to thinking about student finance and home fees, because in your research stage, while you're preparing to go to university, it's really important to make sure that you have an option to fund your studies. And student finance in the UK, this refers to student loans that are sponsored by the government and that are available to help you cover your tuition fee costs and your living costs while you study. And it's very common in the UK to take out a loan to cover your costs of your studies. This is a loan that you only need to repay after you have graduated and you're earning a certain amount of money. But the rules around who is eligible for a student loan can be quite complicated. And I've combined it here with student fee classification because they're often the same, they often align. So people who find that they are eligible for a student loan are usually also eligible for home fee status. So that means you're paying the same amount of fees as a British citizen would pay. If you aren't eligible for home fee status, you may be expected to pay international fees, which is a higher rate. This is the general picture. In the applicant pack, you have links to two websites in the section called Student Finance and Home Fees. You have links to two websites from UCAS and gov.uk. It's really important to check those websites for the detail because this is an overview, but the rules are quite complicated. So you need to check for your specific situation if what exactly you are eligible for. But the general picture is that while you are waiting for a decision on an asylum claim, you aren't eligible for student finance, so you aren't eligible for a student loan. And you are usually classed as an international student for fees purposes, so the higher rate of fees. We've included here, though, check the individual university policy, because it is down to the individual university to decide what fees they charge. Some universities in the UK have a policy of charging home fees to people who are seeking asylum. So before you apply, you can contact the university to check if that's the case. And that's something that STAR campaigns for. So we put pressure on universities to offer home fee status. If you have a status as the result of an asylum claim, you'll need to check exactly what that means for your eligibility. As a general rule, if you have been granted refugee status, so the 5-year leave to remain, then you are eligible for student finance and home fees from the period that you get that status. So immediately you are eligible as long as you remain resident in the UK. The same for humanitarian protection. If you've been granted a different form of limited or discretionary leave to remain, for example, under Article 8, it's important to check the rules of where you are resident because this varies quite a lot between England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So have a look at the links I mentioned in the applicant pack from UCAS and gov.uk to check the rules where you are. If you have indefinite leave to remain, you are usually eligible for student finance and home fees. And we've added though check residency rules, and you usually have to be resident in the UK for 3 years before your course starts in order to be eligible. If though you've come to the UK through a resettlement scheme, for example, ARAP or ACRS, you are eligible for home fees and student finance as soon as you arrive. And then finally, if you are in the UK through one of the Ukraine schemes, you should be eligible for student finance and home fee status as soon as you arrive in the UK. As I say, this is the general picture. It's really important though to check your individual situation because the rules are quite complicated. And there are other things to consider. What I talked through just now is related to your immigration status, but the rules also differ based on where in the UK you are resident. So as I mentioned, England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland each have their own systems and the rules can differ. It can also vary depending on how long you've been resident in the UK, your previous study, and that includes study from overseas, and that can have an impact on how much student finance you're eligible for. And if you're applying for an equivalent level qualification in the UK to one that you already hold, so if you have already done a bachelor's degree overseas and you want to do another one in the UK, you might not be eligible for a student loan unless you meet one of the requirements. There are certain subjects that are excluded from that rule. It also varies depending on what course you're applying for, whether it's part-time or full-time. So as it says here, check your eligibility now. And also a good tip is to apply early if you are eligible, because sometimes it can take a little while to go through the process and share all of the information you need to get a student loan. So check the UCAS and gov.uk websites in the applicant pack to find out more. We're also running an additional session on the 17th of November. Sophie, if you could pop the link in the chat to that you can sign up to that if you do think that you are eligible for a student loan. The Student Loans Company are running an information session with us, and you can come along there to find out exactly how to apply for a student loan. You will, though, be applying for your course before you apply for a student loan.